Welcome to the Rechurch Podcast. This is Tyler Armstrong, the student pastor at 12th Street Baptist Church in Rainbow City, Alabama, with our lead pastor, Thomas Winborn. We are asking the question, how can we become the church that Jesus intended? All right, welcome to this week's episode of the Rechurch Podcast. This is our first guest episode, I think, that we've had, Thomas, where we have somebody with us. So, Thomas, could you introduce our guest for us?
Yeah, so this is my friend Ty Dillon. He's a pastor here in Etowah County, and actually he's a pastor in a facility that I used to go to church, man. Yeah. Like back when I was a little kid, my dad used to take me to church, and so really cool. Ty is we became friends, man. I guess, man, we started like connecting about 7-8 months ago, I guess. Yeah. And when you had your kids, were doing something with our kids from church and stuff. So, Ty, why don't you tell us? I listened to your story, man, over sushi one day, and we really connected, I thought, and then all this COVID stuff hit, and we hadn't spent much time together. But talk a little bit about where you're from, how you got to where you are here in Gadsden, and then tell us about how you came to faith, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Well, let me first start with saying, man, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, man.
And letting me be a part. And man, it's I guess 7 or 8 months, like you said, but it seems like we just kind of known each other.
Yeah, it feels like for a long time, man.
So it's cool, man. I like that. It's I like that a lot. Well, Ty Dillon, and originally, man, I was born in Louisiana. About 2 years old, moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
What part of Louisiana were you in?
Man, Franklinton, Louisiana. You probably never heard of it. It's Washington Parish. Okay. You know, Washington Parish. So,
is that west, north?
Baton Rouge.
Okay, south.
Yeah. You know,
you in Cajun territory.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, born in that area. My mom and her family, you know, were there and all of that stuff. So she grew up, man. We moved to Milwaukee, and I was probably 18 months, you know what I mean, 2 years old. So Milwaukee, most of my life, you know. Interesting enough, back then I would spend the summers in Louisiana, you know, up until I was 12 or 13 years old. So I was I didn't know God was preparing me for something. I was getting the best of both worlds.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. Metropolitan during the school year, summers, rural Louisiana, you know what I mean, kind of getting that mix, man. So it's worked for me. In 2000 and I guess, man, my dates, you know, 2003, I moved to Nashville area, Smyrna, Tennessee. Man, that was where I really had my conversion experience, you know what I mean? I grew up in church, and I, you know, kind of went to church because you had to go to church, you know what I mean? That type of thing. But really, for myself, really getting to know Jesus for myself, man, was when I got away from all the stuff going on in Milwaukee and kind of got quiet, went to Nashville where I didn't really know anybody. Mm-hmm. I got married on June the 8th, and we moved on June the 12th. And so, man, it was kind of quick. And, So
you got an anniversary coming up.
Yeah,
man.
I got an anniversary coming up. Happy anniversary, honey.
Yeah.
There's a couple points, man. You know what I mean?
Good job, bro.
Yeah. So, man, we moved there, and I didn't know that God had a greater plan for me moving. I thought it was, hey, I just want to try something else, whatever it is. And man, he connected me to a pastor in the church there, and my life hasn't been the same. And man, just went into ministry. It never was on my bucket list, but you know, I tell people this. I said, hey, ministry, preaching, pastoring wasn't on my list, but I made one. It was not a mistake, but
One fatal error.
One fatal error. I told God I'll do whatever He tells me. You know, you sure? Okay, well, do this. So it was on from there, man. But it's been a great ride.
Now, what were you doing when that happened as a career before that? Then
Before
you were called to ministry.
Oh man, I was a barber, man.
Yeah.
And so I was still pastoring in a sense, you know. People come in and you're their counselor and you're their advisor and all that other stuff. So I was a barber by trade, man, since I was, I don't know, for years, man. And it was a great experience just dealing with people and all those little nuances. You know?
So I was a bartender for several years. I feel like that's the same job.
Same thing. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Barber, bartender, you know, same thing, man.
I've been in ministry since I was 17, so I cannot relate to y'all at all. At all. I feel like a fish out of water right now. Yeah. I'm over here like, I was 17 years old as a student pastor.
So tell us, how did you get to Gadsden, Alabama?
Well, man, I was, again, the pastor in the church there in Smyrna, Tennessee. Big shout out to Living Truth Christian Center. What's up, Smyrna family? And Amos L. Howard Sr. is the pastor's name there. I connected with him, man, got into that church and started working slowly, that type of thing. You know, I was a guy, go to church, and I'm the first one out of there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And slowly but surely, man, I started getting more acclimating to the church, and man, God just began to kind of grow me and stretch me. And man, eventually, after a period of time, man, once I accepted my call into ministry and all those things, I was, doing the work there, helping at the church. And man, I was helping my pastor who planted this church here. And I was driving him down, you know what I mean? I was just doing whatever I needed to be. I was doing sound, I was doing all this other type of stuff, and man, I'm ministering, and one morning I was on this track, you know what I mean? I was walking the track, exercising, so you can tell that was years ago. Now I felt God telling me that I'm going to call you to go to the Gadsden campus. And I said, okay, well, okay, God, I'll go, but you're going to have to tell my pastor, because I never wanted to be the guy who was trying to get a position or trying to do this or whatever. And so, and it was, I don't know, man, a very short period of time after that, on a Wednesday night after church, he calls me and my wife into the office and he says, you know what, I'm relieving you of all your duties here. And my wife was worship leader at the time, main worship leader and all of that, because God is saying, it's time for you to go to the Gadsden church. So God fulfilled my request. And at this point, I got to fulfill my end of the bargain. And God, man, he led us here. And it's just been a divine move for us. You know what I mean?
That's good.
It took some courage and all of that to do it, because I was
man.
on my own
Give
business. Wife is working, and, she's working her job and all of that. So we had to trust God and walk by faith, man. So
yeah, that's a big change.
Yeah, major change, man.
Yeah,
major change.
So like today, really what we want to do is just, we brought Ty in, not just, just to talk really. I mean, we really wanted to bring him in like for a purpose, because we were talking about, what are we going to do in the midst of just kind of our current racial climate. And so Thomas and I, we were sitting there talking about, man, we need to bring in another voice. So like, we really need to bring in another voice. So, and like Thomas and Ty, like I met Ty just kind of in passing. Today was the first time that I really ever had a really good conversation with Ty. But Thomas has known Ty for months now, like connected through ministry and all these things. And so we really want to talk about Ty's experiences, growing up as a black man in America, and also as a black pastor, and how all of these things are in this current climate. And then really just start the conversation. Like that's the biggest thing. We were talking about this beforehand, prepping for this podcast. We want to start an open dialogue that is not just one time, that's a continuing dialogue with us as friends, with us as brothers in Christ. Because what we talked about, like, not all of us have the same experiences. And we need to realize that, we need to open our eyes to that, and we need to accept that. And the best way to do that is to listen to others from other cultures and other experiences.
Let me say this too, like part of what I think is unique about this is that Gadsden, and I've said it before, and I don't know if I said it on here, but there's high walls around the churches in Gadsden.
Yeah, man.
And so I think that's across any grouping of people. It's just like people are afraid you're going to steal their people. People are afraid that you're going to steal their ideas, and so there's not a lot of holding hands. Even though we may be a part of associations with each other, there's a lot of high walls around churches. And so what I liked about you, Ty, when I first met you and we went out for lunch, was that we really seemed to agree that what we want is networked churches for the sake of a better kingdom impact to reach more people with the gospel. And I think we're like, man, whatever that takes, we can do that. And so the fact that you and I were like an African American dude and a white dude, like that was just like another thing. What we wanted was to see different parts of our community know Jesus. And so I was really excited about giving Ty a call. Ty actually called me and asked me to be a part of something online. I couldn't work it out at that particular time, and then I called you and you were willing to do it. So thanks for being on with us.
Man, I appreciate you having me on, man. I appreciate it. I think exactly what you said. The church culture, that's its own thing. You know what I mean? So me just being not being from Gadsden, that presents its own thing.
No doubt.
Man. It's unfortunate, because we came here and our only objective was to how can we be a part of helping push the kingdom agenda forward. You know what I mean? But you face some resistance there, man. But once you're called to a place, you do what you're supposed to do. And I just believe we're better together than we are apart.
So do you feel like that it took a little while for you to exegete the culture down here?
Yeah, man. I think it's one thing to commute to a place, because that's what we did initially. We did that for years. We're about 2.5 hours away there in Smyrna. So we would drive down, have church, drive back, 5 miles round trip. We did that for years. It's one thing, man, to kind of go in and out. You know what I mean? It's another thing when you're here. You know, you live here, and really trying to digest and get acclimated to what the nuts and bolts of everything are. You know what I mean? It took a little bit, man. In all communities, you know what I mean? Black community, white community, just with people in general. Just who's this guy? You know, and the size of the area. It's kind of like just your last name gives it away. Like, we don't know too many Dillons.
Yeah.
Let me see. Hey, where are you from? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Who are you? You know what I mean?
So funny, I'll throw this in, man. I literally was delivering packets for VBS to people that signed up. We had like 80% of people were on VBS, or virtual VBS, and we're not even connected with our church. So I'm driving up on the mountain, Nakalula Mountain, and I'm up on the mountain, and I'm looking at this packet going, this dude's last name, man, I got a family with that last name. You know what I mean? Like, and I asked him, are you related to so-and-so? He's like, yeah. I said, hey, man, we're cousins.
Yeah.
That didn't happen a lot of places. You know what I mean?
One of the former pastors here, he used to make the joke about me being local. He's like, man, listen, Tyler was either kin to him or he dated somebody that they knew or he dated him.
Everybody says that about you.
Everybody knows me. And so, like, I mean, I couldn't imagine, and I mean, just part of being local, I guess, just dropping into a culture and saying, like a city like Gadsden or anywhere really, and say, okay, I'm going to do what God does. I mean, I've grown up here. Like, I mean, it's just like, man, I'm going to follow God in my hometown.
I was in Appalachia, Maryland for 9 years and never felt like I fully got a grip on the culture.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It was just, it's so on the surface, like where I grew up, Southern feeling, but it really is not. And so I never felt like I really got a good grasp. But now here, growing up in it, I feel like it's like the back of my hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, here's the benefit to that. You know, in my personal opinion, and here's how I looked at it, you know, that God would take me and plant me in a place where I don't have some of the biases of, oh, here's my family, here I went to high school with this guy, you know, or I played ball with this guy, so I can stand flat-footed and give the word of God, and I don't have some of those things to kind of work through that, hey, I really want to say this, but I don't want, you know what I mean? So I believe that's one of the reasons God would plant me here, because I just give the word, man, and it is what it is. You know what I mean? I don't have some of those things that I have to depend on, or what's going to happen when I go to Granny's house and the family's there and that type of thing. You know, now since then, let me be clear, man. There are people who have just embraced us like family. You know what I mean? It's just it's been a relationship that's been very loving, very kind. So it hasn't been all resistance, man. It's been wonderful in a lot of aspects. You know what I mean? It's been great.
Yeah, and what I think, what Tyler and I were talking about the other day is something that I've been talking about since I got here, and Tyler's resonated with, and a lot of people in our leadership, our church resonated with, is that from my experience, moving away, I mean, I lived Alabama to Texas for seminary, and then back to Alabama, then up north, for us north, I know it's still the south, but Maryland. And, you know, my experience was when I moved back down here, I had forgotten how segregated and how much racism was still alive, hardcore, which is everywhere, but I could see it so differently coming back into our culture here in Gadsden. And not everybody is at the same level as other people, but it's definitely deep, and it's thick, and it's ingrained, and it's generational. And so my desire has been, how do we address this in the church? Because we got people that love Jesus that don't realize that, like, they don't realize that they're just like me, that that I'm a recovering racist, recovering bigot, you know. And so how do we get them to that point of that? And it's a process, man. It's like a dialogue, what we're talking about having here. So how do we get them down the path? And what's funny is, like, I was talking to both you guys, a year ago we planned out sermons that we're about to hit in July that are going to deal with this issue, because we're just preaching through the book of Ephesians piece by piece. And so we're going to be hitting some of those things at the same time as all this stuff has come down with the killing of George Floyd, and you've got all the protests happening, and all this stuff is kind of brought into conversation at every home now. And so you know, I didn't want to get on here and talk about particularly those things, although that's part of the conversation. What I want to talk about is, how do we get people to understand that that we have racist issues within us, but it's sin issues within us that are racism is played out by, and how do we change, man? How do we open eyes? How do we change how we see people? How do we change how we live together? And how do we get the idea in our head that we are Christians? Like, if you're Christians, man, like we talked a little earlier, like, God, I don't think God is colorblind. He created diversity.
I agree.
Right, you know, but we're a part of a new nation, man. Our citizenship is the citizenship of the kingdom of God, right? Absolutely. So we're all brothers and sisters.
We need to realize that as a community, as a faith family, we are closer to Christians of another race than we are the non-Christian people of our same race.
Right.
Sure. And that's the thing that we don't realize. We think that we're closer to, the people that look like us and all these things. If they aren't saved, you're closer to the Chinese brother that's in China right now, or the African sister who's meeting in church in China and Africa right now. And we are closer in that regard, and I don't think that we do. Yeah. A lot of us do. I don't think that we realize there's this big kingdom, really big kingdom. And I think that big kingdom says, you know what? We're all one nation, we're all one flesh, and because we're all united in the blood of Christ. Ephesians 2, tearing down the wall of hostility to make us one in Christ Jesus. And
absolutely.
So Ty, tell us some of your experiences, man. Let's just start this conversation like that.
Let me preface it by saying this too. I didn't realize that I'm just my ignorance, man. I did not realize that African American people really are treated differently in certain contexts and demographics and moments than say like white people are. Because we talked about earlier, and I'll let go after this. And
no, you're good, man. You're good.
But I didn't realize that while every minority culture understands the majority culture, which is white culture in the United States, but by necessity, that the white culture does not understand minority cultures at all, really. All we see is what we see on the news or what we have a couple of friends, but we don't really understand things at all. And we have no thing that makes us want to understand that for the most part. Yeah. And so it wasn't until I had some friends of mine develop friendships and saw people get treated differently that my mind was blown. I had no idea that literally people get hassled differently in certain contexts, and people are fearful for things, and that's a real thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's absolutely a real thing. And let me just say, man, I appreciate, again, the dialogue, and I appreciate the honesty and authenticity, because I believe that is going to be the core of people really getting an understanding of this. When we kind of sit back and we all act like we all have it together, and we act like, at the barbecue or the fish fry or whatever, that we don't say certain things, or we don't have certain perspectives, or we haven't been taught these things when we were young or whatever it is, and we kind of just smile and all. That's fictitious, you know what I mean? But if we get to the nuts and bolts and we're honest about, how we were raised, or, to sit here and say, I'm recovering racist, you know what I mean? That type of thing, man, I can appreciate that. I can respect that. This is what it is. This is how I was. I'm changed in Christ. However, I'm working through what I'm working through, and I don't know what I don't know.
Sure.
All you know is what you know. It's not like, you take a break and you pause and say, hey, I want to be another race now for the next 10 years. This is what I know. This is my experience. And so that's why, I wouldn't sit here and try to represent every black person, because all I know is Ty's experience.
Exactly, man.
And someone may say, and I've heard black people say this, there's no race problem. What are you talking about? But it's the bubble that they've been living in, or whatever it is. But for some of us, it's been an issue. And I won't sit here and act like, man, there are people who are burning crosses on my lawn and doing all this other type of stuff. You know what I mean? But however, I can look over my life and see that I have always had to be aware of my skin color. Wherever I've gone, I've had to be aware of what neighborhoods not to go in. You know what I mean? We're kind of taught, whether it is directly or whether it is suggested, that there's certain neighborhoods that are kind of too nice and you shouldn't be in those neighborhoods. Those kinds of things. Not just living, I mean just driving in the area. Because you want to stick out like a sore thumb.
Can you explain a little bit about that? I mean, so I think it's hard for me. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around that. I know what you're saying. I understand that. I believe that. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around to empathize. Yeah. I can sympathize that, but to empathize that. Can you express how you came to those realizations, or how you experienced that? Maybe I'm putting you on the spot. But
No, you're good. No, man. I would use where I stayed was north side of Milwaukee, which is a lot of people think Milwaukee, because it's Wisconsin, it's kind of like Vernon Shirley, Happy Days, that type of thing. Wisconsin, no. I think last I checked, Wisconsin as a state was maybe 4% black, but they're all in Milwaukee, just about, you know what I mean? Right. Yeah. And so I say north side, man, so black people all around me, you know what I mean? And there's different malls, maybe the Mayfair Mall or Brookfield Mall or Northridge Mall, and you wouldn't know these places, but they're kind of on the outskirts, the nicer malls. You know what I mean? There was a mall called Capitol Court. I think it's called Midtown or something now, but Capitol Court back in the day, that was the Black folks mall. You know, so you were cool to go there. You can go and pull up and got your music playing or whatever you like to do, and we're teenagers, so we're doing teenage stuff. You know what I mean? And you'd be fine. But if you took that same behavior, you went out to Northridge or Mayfair or whatever it is, then your mom would say something like, you know, be careful when you're out there. You know what I mean? Be careful when you're out that way. And man, you're talking about getting pulled over, or you're talking about just getting harassed or going to certain stores, and it's like you're being followed around the store, and you notice that the salesperson, everywhere you go, they're there. You know what I mean? You got a personal shopper, a personal helper. You know what I mean? And being made, your presence being, it feels like what is a threat to that particular establishment. Sure, and all you're trying to do is, you know, buy something or look at this or see something different, or just going to a particular neighborhood, man, crossing certain streets. So it's like almost we had a map, because we didn't have GPS back then. You know what I mean? You had a map in your head that.
What's a map?
On the time, you know what I mean?
Millennials didn't know what that is.
Exactly.
I remember MapQuest. Do y'all remember that? Like, I remember that.
Print off the directions.
Yeah, you printed off the directions. That was like the first GPS thing. But maps. What were those? So anyways, you had a map.
It's almost like you had a map in your head that these streets were your boundaries. This is your territory. This is where you need to be.
Man.
And because if I cross this certain sector in the city, then I was asking for trouble almost. Right, you know what I mean? Right. And so
when you say trouble though, okay, so that's the same for like white people, you know, thinking like you don't go into this neighborhood because you might get trouble. But when we say trouble like that, we mean you know there's violence there. There might be violence against you because you're white in an African American neighborhood. So when you say that, what do you mean by that?
I'm talking about trouble from the police. I'm saying like being harassed, or I'm saying you know, just someone in that neighborhood, you know, using some derogatory terms or whatever it is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the kind of trouble I'm talking about. I'm not talking about any violence or any shootings or any of those type of things. It's a different kind of trouble, man. And those are the kind of things we had to kind of work through in our minds. You know, there's a certain time that you knew that, okay, I need to be back on my side of town. Right. You know, that kind of thing.
You know, like growing up here, you were told, you know, as people, I grew up and went to Southside High School, right? So I was told, if you're on Tuscaloosa Avenue, you're only down there for no good. Yeah. And that's a bad place. Man, you don't go down there, it's dangerous down there. You know, well, that's not dangerous for everybody down there. You know what I'm saying?
Well, go down same type of things. If you're at this particular mall, you know, you got to be out there stealing. Because you certainly couldn't afford anything in these stores. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You know, and you have to be out there trying to steal something out of the store, steal something out the car, steal the cars and the nicer cars, that type of thing. So that was kind of the assumption, you know, and those were the things we had to work through, man, and deal with. You know, I remember one time, man, I was driving, and how
old were you at this point?
I probably was about maybe 17 or 18, and I used to wear I think it's the Houston Texans baseball cap because they had the T, you know, for tie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I used to wear the baseball cap, man, and I had a 84 Cutlass. You know? A Cutlass, man, and I'm just driving, man, kind of minding my business. I get pulled over, man. The cops hop out, and when I say they hop out, man, they hop out like I was on America's Most Wanted, and they have just got their suspect, and you know they come to both sides, and man, they search me up and down. They're checking out my car, all this other stuff.
Were you doing anything wrong driving? Like I
was driving while black. You know what I mean?
They pulled you out of the car. They frisked you.
No, I didn't get pulled out of the car. But what happened was they had me just kind of hemmed up on both sides. I'm sitting there in the car, and at this time, some people may remember this, man. This just didn't start with shootings of of people, man, getting shot. I'm not just talking about harassed. I'm talking about killed. So back then it was like, I remember there was a story of a guy who reached for a cassette tape.
Yeah.
You know, and so I'm sitting there, and you know, we've kind of been taught to, man, just keep your hands on the steering wheel.
Yeah.
You know, so you're thinking all this could go bad. You know, so they had me all surrounded and all this other stuff, and he's kind of going off on me and all this stuff, and give me your license and all of that. And it's like, do I reach for my license, or what do I do? If I don't reach for it, he's gonna say you're not complying. But if I do, then he's reached for something. So what do you do?
Yeah.
You know, and so I slowly got my stuff out, man, gave it to him, everything was good. And man, they got another call or something happened. And he said, hey, you know, we gotta go, you know, that type of thing. And I think that's the thing that kind of got me out of that, you know what I mean?
Goodness.
And he said, when he left, he said, get this crack fixed on your windshield. And it was about, I don't know, man, an inch crack or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I thought he was about to kind of billy club the windshield when he said, get this crack fixed. I thought he was gonna, but his guy, his partner was telling him, hey, we got to get out of here. You know what I mean? So they left, man. It was just kind of by the grace of God. But you're talking about being shook like the rest of the day, the next day.
Yeah.
You get home, you're happy to get home. You really don't even want to drive anywhere else because you're curious about how's it going to turn out the next time. I got out of this one by the hair of my chinny chin chin, you know.
Right.
So what's going to happen on the next time? So you have those experiences, and those things build. They shape you in a way, you know. There's just this unspoken thing. So now, driving is not just driving. It's almost like navigating through, you know, this maze of what neighborhoods to go to and what streets to take, and or what time is it, or I can't go this area because, you know, so you're living with that type of those boundaries which have been set. You know what I mean?
Like for me, like, I mean, you talking about getting pulled over, you know, like that. Like, it reminded me of the story that I got pulled over in my hometown, in my girlfriend now wife's front yard by police. And the cop came up with a gun drawn on me and then 10-year-old girlfriend's little brother, who's now my 17-year-old brother-in-law, with a gun drawn on us. And I remember that moment, and at no point was I terrified, because I knew I didn't do anything wrong.
Wow.
And my car was a suspected vehicle in the city of Atala for like doing something illegal and all this. But that's just a story that I tell now that I laugh about. I mean, I have the tag from that car that says 44 pounds in my office. It's literally up there. It is up there.
Which looks like he carries a lot of marijuana.
Yeah, and I was driving a '98 Gold Camry with tinted windows. I mean, but I was never scared like that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I mean, it's just something I tell just across the table to make people laugh now.
Yeah.
That me and Zane got a gun pulled on us by a police officer who was, you know, a little bit overzealous.
Yeah.
Man, you had a completely different experience.
Oh, completely different experience.
And I was around your age.
Yeah. And I mean, something as simple as license plate cover. You know, make sure it's not too dark because the police will pull you over. You know what I mean? Those kinds of things. You wanted to make sure everything was right with your car and your music wasn't too loud and you just didn't agitate anything. You know, the interesting thing about it is, you know, the flip side, because I don't want to sit here and say, like, man, all cops are this.
Right.
My best buddy, my best friend out of high school went straight to the police force. His brother's a police. Good guys, awesome guys, you know, that type of thing. So it's not just the force in general. But there's people, man, who just, I don't care if they were a garbage man, they would probably, you know, dump your trash over if they didn't, you know, if they were racist or whatever it is. So it just happens to be their particular way that they can act out what's in their heart, because it's going to come back down to a heart
issue.
The
hard part for police, I mean, like 99.9% of them are great guys that want to just serve the community, right? And then there's some that have this, like, looks like everything else. Somebody has a race issue. Somebody has whatever.
Which is, I mean, like you just pointed out, that's any profession. That's any profession.
But that profession in particular has authority written all over it. So that's a different one.
And it's under a microscope constantly.
I'll tell this story about my buddy. We used to run like this, man. You know what I mean? And where he was, I was, or whatever. We just were super close. You know, one day I couldn't find him, and he was answering the phone and all this. I know he's a cop, so I'm trying to figure out, okay, what's happened. And man, when I finally talked to someone in his family, he was like, "Oh, he got shot. He's in the hospital." you know, and thank God he caught a bullet in his foot, the bottom of his foot, and so it healed. He's back, you know, everything was cool. But when I talked to him, like, man, what happened? He said, you know, we did a raid, and this guy was sitting on the couch, and he was determined in his mind he's not going back to jail. And so he just started shooting, and he jumped out a second-story window, and he was shooting at the police. He was just helping me understand, like, in that moment, it's not black, white, anything. It's just people see us against them, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he said, I have those kinds of things happen where people just, in their mind, I'm not going to jail today, and they'll do whatever they need to do.
Sure.
And so now I'm trying to go home, you know, to my family, and so it becomes its own thing. You know what I mean? But then when you sprinkle the whole, the race and the biases and all of that, it just makes for a bad situation, man.
And it's so complicated, right?
Yeah,
We just talked about it. And I still don't want to get into it too much, honestly. But George Floyd's
toxicology.
Yeah, it came back,
Yeah.
you know, doing the autopsy, and it seems that he had some type of methamphetamines and some fentanyl in his system, which for some people will exonerate the police officers.
Yeah.
Dude, it doesn't matter if this guy hit a cop.
Yeah.
Like, you don't put your knee on a guy's neck with
For
your full
9
force
minutes
for 9
straight.
minutes,
Yeah.
dude. That's just, there's no excuse, right?
Yeah.
There's no excuse. And at the same time, I think some people want to see, like, the death penalty for this guy, which maybe the law calls for. You can't change what the law says for a particular case. So who knows what's going to happen? It seems like they're going to try to press it to the extent of the law, the fullest they can, which is good. But I feel like that it doesn't matter now, because now there's a little bit of like doubt cast on it because it's toxicology report, and so one side's going to say, well, you know, if he hadn't been doing the bad things, he wouldn't have got treated this way.
Right.
But that has nothing to do with what happened to this guy and how he died.
Yeah.
At the same time, you got the other side of things where, you know, no justice for something. No matter what you do, some justice won't be enough for some people too.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the real issue I'm concerned with is these are all real things. Some people don't understand it. What I want is for our people in our church to recognize, like, maybe when I look at people, maybe when I think of people, maybe when I talk to people, when I talk about people, I'm coming at this from a sinful perspective that I wasn't aware of, and I need to become aware of that, and I need to change.
So Thomas, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Like, what would be a good example of that? Like we've had conversations, like, you know, there's overt racism and there's like covert racism, which is kind of like socially acceptable racism.
Sure. Right.
Then nobody's gonna call anything out on it. So, like, could you give me an example of that? Like what you've seen?
So I mean, you know, like when we were moving back to this area, like less than 2 years ago, we were talking to folks in this town that we know and love, like relationally connected to, you know, and talking about one particular neighborhood. We were looking at a house, and they made sure to make sure we understood that there were some black people that lived in that neighborhood. And my wife and I are like, what, and? Like, what are you trying to say? And,
what does that matter?
Yeah, and the statement was made, well, but they're the right kind of black people.
Wow.
You know, like they're in this neighborhood because they want their kids in a better educational environment.
Right.
You know, and like there's so many wrong things with that statement.
Yeah.
And so addressing that in that moment, it seemed to be more of a shock than it did do any change in that moment.
Yeah.
But that's just something, that's just in the hearts, man. Like that's just that people have these ideas and they're like trying to make it a us versus them, or there's different grades of this minority group or that. And another example would be, you know, people that are concerned about their kids going to school with or being friends with or dating people of other like backgrounds ethnically.
Which is big in this area.
Oh man.
I grew up, you know, I went to Wanna Park Elementary. So like, I mean, I was telling them before this, I went to Wanna Park Elementary, so like I grew up in a very interracial environment.
Right.
In 6th grade, I went to Ively Elementary, which, because they had a 6th grade in the elementary school, so I could go to school one more year with my brother. It was easier for my parents to pick me up.
Yeah.
I walk in and there was no black people. And I was like, I was in culture shock. I mean, because my best friend, in elementary school was a black kid. And I walk in, there was no African Americans at this school. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what do I do with this? I'm like, what do I do with this? And when I went back to Etowah Middle, it was almost like a culture shock for my Ivy friends. But for me, I was like, man, this is like, yes. Mm-hmm. But then, like, I mean, I had kids that said, listen, if you date a black girl, like, I ain't talking to you.
Wow.
Like, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like seriously?
When I went to high school, up until my senior year, we had one African American student out of 800 students.
Oh man!
You know what I'm saying? And so,
pressure.
like how? So how do you even understand what you're doing wrong
Well,
in that environment. How do you change?
Yeah,
how do you see
I don't
it?
know if you do, man.
Yeah.
Well, I don't. Let me. I'm not saying I don't know if you do change.
Right.
I don't know that you can just see something that you've always been a part
You're
of.
swimming in it,
Yeah,
man. You don't know you're swimming in it.
And especially as kids, man. Like you know, but then as we get older, like I mean, like I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he said, you know, my dad used to say, man, one black person moves to the neighborhood, man, the neighborhood's gone.
Yeah.
The neighborhood's gone. And he said, man, I'll never forget, we had African neighbors move in, and like my dad treated them differently. Like I watched it happen, and I'm like, man, like
So
I didn't
the
grow up
question
in that
becomes-
environment. It was just
the question
different.
becomes, where did he get that from? Where did that person get that from? Because it's passed down, man.
Yeah,
and
man.
you know, all you have to do is go and look at a playground with kids, and just put them in there, man. Those kids are just gonna play.
They don't care, man.
They don't
Yeah,
care,
dude.
They don't care, man. They're gonna just play, and they're gonna have fun. You know, do what kids do, cry, eat candy. They just do kid stuff.
We homeschool our kids, and we just got through for whatever the context was about 2-3 months ago. In the history book we were using for homeschooling, it talked about the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
And my kids,
And it wasn't in February either. Like it was like
it
March.
I don't remember exactly the date on it, but I
I
remember it just being like, my kids were just like, what?
Yeah.
Like they didn't even understand how to compute that.
Yeah.
Like that people, because of skin tone, were treated differently, and why and how and what's going on. Like we read some Martin Luther King stuff, you know, at their level, and talked about it, and they just it was like this, like I cannot imagine, I don't understand how to compute that, you know. Kids don't get it. So it's what you're brought up in, man.
It is what you're brought up in, and I think it's we're brought up in certain environments, and you know what I mean, different cultural dynamics, and I think to admit that that's error is also to simultaneously admit that whoever taught you that was an error.
Yeah.
And so
That's
sometimes
hard,
the allegiance to whoever
Paw.
whoever, that allegiance to that, to say that they were wrong and that they were a racist or whatever, then some people, they can't swallow that pill, you know what I mean? Or it's very difficult for them to do.
Yeah.
You know, because I believe at the end of the day, man, the core of who we are, man, as humans, if we just sit in that and say, hey, would I want someone to treat me this way?
Yeah.
We all can answer certain things emphatically no, emphatically yes, whatever it is. And the fact that we're able to kind of brush over that and still do what we do is said that there's something missing, or there's some insecurities, or there's a group that I need to make sure that I impress, or whatever it is. There's some things about me that I'm not strong enough to stand up and say, hey, no, that's wrong, or no, I'm not going to do that, you know, that type of thing. Or I justify it in my own mind to say, oh, those are the good ones, oh, those are this one, and I try to compartmentalize who's who and all that. And you can never do that. That's always going to get you in trouble, man. As it relates to that, I think understanding is the key.
Yeah, I think so, man. And that's the hardest thing. I had a professor telling me a long time ago, the hardest thing to remember is what it's like to not know something.
Yeah.
And so once you become self-aware of the issues in your own heart, then it's easier to deal with those things. But how do you take and remember what it's like to not know, and then help somebody else come through that process? You know, that's really hard to do, and that's what I want. I mean, it's as subtle as language used. I heard somebody say the other day, you know, I was on their side until they started getting violent, and now, you know, I'm not on that side anymore. And I'm like, why are we saying that I'm on their side? Like, why are we using us and them language here? This is everybody's problem. This is everybody's. Everybody should be upset about this. And just because somebody's being violent doesn't change the fact that we should be upset about an injustice. You know. But and then you got generations like for us, maybe for our age, Ty. How old are you, Ty?
No, 42, man.
I'm 43, and for us, you know, I think like we grew up, and I think it's different for us even than it is for like Tyler and younger, because that generation, like if Papa was wrong, and I'm okay with that, and I'm not gonna put up with it, you know. But for our generation, it's harder. But our generation older, it's harder to go back and say that Papa was wrong, or you know, Grandma was wrong, or whatever. But I think it's changing. But I think there's still such a divide between the folks that don't even recognize it's a real issue,
especially
justify it
here in the Bible Belt South.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to interject that.
Right.
I mean, especially here.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we and the thing is, we try to justify it by saying, well, that's how I was raised.
So how do we change it then?
Yeah, how do we change? Like where do we go from here, Ty? Like how can we? You know, I always go back to James. You know, being slow to speak. You know, slow to anger, quick to listen. And if you watch social media is like, you better be quick to speak. You better get angry as quick as possible. And what in the world's listening? I mean, we don't do that. And so, like, how can we change? How would you tell these people that, man, like, how can we listen better? How can we understand and come to that place of understanding, like you just said?
Well, I think that's the key word, man. Is understanding. But understanding comes with wanting to understand and wanting to know, and wanting to get some type of context around the person, because I think that's one of the things we do terribly as people in general. Man, we take stuff out of context and we say, that person, they did that because they're just bad, they're a criminal, whatever, and we don't think about, they had 5 or 6 brothers and sisters at home and they're raising them almost because mom's on drugs or whatever it is.
Yeah, or she's working. And,
they feel like they didn't have any other choice or whatever it is, or they're young and their brain hasn't even developed to where they can, process and think through that process, or they grew up in a certain environment which said that this is what you should do and how you should do and all of that. And it's like you said, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so I think getting the understanding and getting some context, man, some conversation around that stuff, and really trying to understand one another.
Yeah.
And seeing value.
How do you do that unless you're intentional?
You have to be.
Like for instance, you and I connected one day, I guess, outside of the building here when you're picking up your son for something, and we talked about. You reached out to me, I think, said let's get together, and so and my first thought was like, let's go eat some lunch together. And then the next thing was let's get together at somebody's house. And then COVID-19 struck, and here we are, right? But that's the intentionality. Like I don't want to say that I only want to be friends with Ty because he's a black guy and I'm a white guy, and because we need to get intentional about that. I like Ty. Ty and I love Jesus, man. So I think I have fun being around Ty. But I do think it's intentionality. Like we want our kids. We live in an almost all Anglo community. We want our kids to grow up around all kinds of people, man. Whether high income, low income, African American, Asian, white, like whatever, man. People that speak Spanish, people that don't. We just want to have that exposure, man. And just so that when you're exposed to more and more people and recognize we're all people and we all need Jesus and we're all sinners and we all have problems, and when we can be honest and real in those conversations and not make it all about the race thing or not make it all about, but that to be a part of the conversation, I think that's where the intentionality happens. First thing you got to do is find somebody that you can talk to. And I think a lot of people are open to saying like, hey, I don't understand what's going on. Can you help me?
Man, listen, that right there, just that statement is a great open door to a conversation for most people. Now you got crazies, man, in every ethnic group. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So again, I'm not speaking for all black people, but just to hear, hey, I don't get it, but I want to get it. Let's talk. Versus saying, I don't get it, and you guys shouldn't feel that way, and you know what I mean. You should feel how we feel. That type of thing. That is
Please
like very Tell me how I feel and how not to feel. Like you're still trying to tell me what to do. So it can be very condescending. And that's when you see different things happen and people feel like their back is against the wall and I need to make you listen to me. You know what I mean? And by whatever means. But having that saying, hey, I don't get it all. I don't understand it. That's a major piece, man. That's a major piece. And here's the thing for me. Here's my thing. You feel how you feel. And I believe that if you're really trying to have genuine, authentic relationship, the only way you're going to do that, you have to give the other person or other persons the opportunity to be free in how they feel.
Sure.
I can't tailor that when I come to the table with you. I need you to say, man, I'm a recovering racist. Okay, I can work with that.
Yeah.
But when you come to the table like, oh no, I'm good, man. I have one black friend. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
We justify that.
You're trying to justify it and prove to me, you know, whatever that is. Then we have some work to do. But when we give people the freedom to feel, this is where I am. This is how I feel. You know, and how can we work through this?
Sure.
That's the starting point. Is honesty and authenticity. Someone said this, man, I think it's true.
That's good.
They said that, you know, there's no unity without honesty.
Yeah,
man. 100%, man.
There's no unity without honesty.
100%.
So if we're going to come together, man, it's like we have to be honest and just.
And there's
put it
no
all out
change
there.
without intentionality.
That's correct.
You know what I'm saying? Like nothing's just going to change for the positive. Things will degrade.
Yeah.
They will not get better, man.
And just interjecting there, you know, so many times, like, we feel like social media is enough.
Yeah.
Like anybody can post a black square on Blackout Tuesday and say, "Hey, I'm listening."
Yeah.
But this is what I mean. I'm sitting there going, "But are you really?" Like because if all you do is post on social media, listen, man, I care about you, I hear you, but you're not intentionally trying to seek to understand and trying to listen and trying to really say, "I want to know how you feel."
Yeah.
Like I want to know how you feel because. I mean, I heard this. I heard a pastor say this one time. You know, fact for fact, feeling for feeling. When talking to his wife, I can't exchange facts for feelings because it doesn't change how my wife feels. It's the same thing. Like, and when we have these conversations, we need to talk about the way we feel. And it's like Thomas. I mean, Sunday, man. Like, I mean, I brought this up, man. This dude just came out. I was like, man, listen, I'm a recovering racist. I was a bigot, and just talks about those things. I have never in my life heard a pastor say that from the pulpit. Yeah. And I'm sitting there going, man, I can get behind this dude.
I respect it.
Yeah, man. I can get behind this dude because like he and I mean I serve underneath you, bro, and I serve alongside you. Sure. But for me, like I'm like, man, that guy's broken just like I am, and I can get beside that guy in the trenches. We can fight together and we can seek to understand together. And so and that's the biggest thing, man, is seeking to understand and actually stepping out of your comfort zone and doing it.
Yeah. You can't watch some of the videos we've watched of live action, like people dying, getting shot because they like say that they legally have a weapon in the car, or watching a guy get kneeled on with full weight of a body on top of him and watch him take his last breath without being impacted and saying something's wrong, man.
Yeah,
like,
but we're wrong. So desensitized.
We gotta be. But if you love Jesus, man, if you love Jesus, you're not okay with that.
I'm 100% with you. I'm just saying, like in our culture,
I get it. I get that.
We're so insensitized to it. So like, how do we, obviously overcome that? Because I mean, I said this the other day. It's getting old. Like I'm tired of seeing unarmed black men as hashtags.
Yeah.
It gets old for me. Like I'm sitting there watching it, and the fact that we are so desensitized to it, and it happens so often. I mean, literally just weeks ago we had the Ahmaud Arbery case.
Yeah.
And then we had the Breonna Taylor case, and then we had Eric Garner, Tamir Rice. I mean, we could sit here and just name after name.
And then white culture says, but there are white people that get killed the same thing, and you're right, that's wrong too.
Yeah.
But that doesn't change the fact that like I don't get pulled over and I'm afraid I might die today. Oh, yeah. Because real things happen. It doesn't happen the same way, man.
I mean? 100%. And you can name names and you can keep going and all of that. But like you said, how do you change that? And it's a very real experience. And I don't know if people really understand what that's like to live in a defensive mindset.
Man,
you're always on the defense. Like as soon as you leave your house, you're like, okay, kiss your kids and all that, and you just like, man, I want to come back home.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And I've seen it in metropolitan area, Milwaukee. Different stories I could tell you. I've seen it in Louisiana. I would go visit my cousins, and they say, hey, we can't go swim there, and I'm like, what do you mean? You know what I mean? Yeah. Those kinds of things. I've seen it in church. Yeah. As a pastor, man, I've walked into church and someone asked me, are you lost?
Yeah, dude.
Wow.
Are you lost? I mean, I'm talking about in Etowah County.
Yeah, man.
Are you lost? You know what I mean? I've had the looks and all that because I'm a show yourself friendly. Like I said, I reached out to you. Yeah, I'm that kind of guy. And so it's like, what are you doing here? That type of thing. And I'm like, what do you mean? We're serving the Lord, but are you lost? That kind of thing. So seeing that, man, it is it's a very real thing. It's very in your face.
It's tangible.
It's tangible for us, man. It's a daily thing. I was walking in my neighborhood and man, I live in a good neighborhood, nice neighborhood, that type of thing. My neighborhood is probably predominantly white, You know what I mean? And man, it's been since this COVID thing. So stay in the area where there's a school. The school shut down. But I see an officer in the parking lot. You know, he's in an SUV. I'm like, who was he in the parking lot? And school shut down. I'm out walking in the morning. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. It's a little chilly. I got my hood on. I'm walking, just getting some exercise. But you know what? I know the rules. I'm black. I'm walking in a predominantly white neighborhood. There's cops here. Man, it doesn't matter how cold it is. Let me take this hood off. I want you to be able to see me. I'm taking my cell phone out of my pocket so you don't see any kind of bulge. So these are the things that you deal with as a black pastor who loves God. I still have the residue of, you know, those things. And I wouldn't even say the residue is still a reality that I have to. So I'm you know, because I'm thinking, someone see me walking and they call the police, or what is it? Or so you still deal with those things, and I'm waving, so you see me. I'm not a threat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you have these things. So then, when it goes bad and you see it on national TV or whatever, you're thinking like, man, okay, could that have been me?
Sure.
My family, my cousin, my son. You know, those kinds of things, and so that's the effect of it, man.
But the white perspective from that is well, if he hadn't reached for that, or if he had done this, and it's not the same, man. And that's where it's heartbreaking for me, because I know that we're going to have people that we know and love, and some we don't know, that just watch. They're going to watch this, they're going to listen to this, and they're going to hear this and go, well, this guy is like an activist. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like I'm telling you now, this guy is an activist for Jesus.
For Jesus.
That's what he's an activist for. We're talking about this because we asked you to have this conversation today, and you want to have this conversation. But my biggest thing is I don't want people to look at this and be like, okay, I get that, I hear that, I'm sensitive to that. No, this is, from this point, what you need to do if you're listening or watching this is you need to say, okay, God, you go spend time, man. You cut off the TV, you open up your word, you ask God to reveal in your heart where there's areas that you need to repent of in regard to this type of conversation, to these situations, and say, God, show me. Show me where I am not like Jesus. And then get around other people and ask them, like, hey, there's some things about me that I'm not like Jesus. Let's talk about this for a minute. If you hear something out of me that sounds like it's not Jesus, like, call me out. Let's talk about it. I want to change. I want to be like Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what it's going to take, man.
That's exactly what it's going to take. And it is, I believe, when we get to our allegiances that are, we hold them at a greater esteem than we do our relationship with Jesus Christ. That's when we get in trouble, whether it's our race, whether it's our neighborhood, whether it's our family, whether it's our job, organization, our badge, whatever it is. And we hold it at a greater esteem than we do the Word of God. We're going to always find ourselves in a place of division and troubles and issues and all of this shirt I have on, man. Be evangelist. He said, what is be evangelist? Well, it's Acts chapter 1 and verse 8. He says, after the Holy Spirit comes, you're going to be my witness. And a lot of times word association says to us that witness means I'm going door to door. I'm going to witness. Right. He says you're going to be something. Anything you're going to be, it suggests transformation. It suggests that you're taking on the attributes, or you're taking on the DNA of. And so there's a reason this B is in red, because it's the blood of Jesus, man, that should have changed, that has provided an opportunity for us to change. Right. Because it's not a forceful change, you know, but it's providing an opportunity for us to change and be something different. And that something different, I believe, it supersedes a color, it supersedes an organization, it supersedes any of those things. And if we can ever have a true allegiance to Christ and who he is, you're going to be my witnesses. What do witnesses do in a legal setting? Well, they are representatives of what happened. They tell the story of truth, what happens. You know what I mean? That's the whole purpose. And so we're supposed to be representing what happened with Christ. You know what I mean? What he did and the life he lived. And he should be our model. And anybody that, you know, that's following after Jesus, man, when you see his model, Jesus embraced people. You know what I mean? He embraced people. And he was, man, he was in the thick of things for making sure that people in general really understood what he had come for. You see what I mean?
Yeah, man.
And so I get confused, even as a pastor, how I can talk to people and they say, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, oh, I follow Jesus. Follow him where? And you know what I mean? And which Jesus are you following?
Yeah.
Are you following the idea of Jesus? The guy that's on the necklace or on the picture?
The teacher Jesus, the Savior Jesus, or the guy that gets you out of this moment of trouble Jesus, or are you following the King?
The King, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's that settles it all. I know, it's a lot of different little nuances and all of those things, but at the end of the day, I believe it's going to start with believers, man.
Yeah.
True believers.
Yes.
Who are saying, okay, Jesus is the focal point.
Yeah.
And all this other stuff, man, it's not our goal or our objective. You know what I mean?
Well, let me do this. I know we're about to close down,
Yeah.
so let me just say this. One, thank you so much, Ty, for coming
Man,
on
I
with
appreciate
us.
you. 100% to be on.
I hope this is an ongoing conversation,
Yeah.
whatever the context.
It's a good start. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man,
exactly.
great start.
Yeah.
Why don't you say again? This is Ty Dillon. Tell us church, how to find your church, like web, phone, whatever it is, and then we'll close it out for today.
Okay. This is Ty Dillon, Living Truth Christian Center. We're located at 216 Pinehurst Street in East Gadsden. Living Truth CC/Gadsden.org. You can find us there on the web, 256-494-3100. That's us, man. We're one church, and we're in 2 campuses. We have a campus in Smyrna, Tennessee, and so that's how we're doing it, man.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Ty. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
I'm going to close with this passage from Ephesians. It says, "Therefore remember that at one time you Gentiles in the flesh, called the uncircumcision by what is called the circumcision, which is made in the flesh by hands. Remember that you at that time were separated from Christ, alienated from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers to the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now, in Christ Jesus, you who once were far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. For he himself is our peace, who has made us both one, and has broken down in his flesh the dividing wall of hostility. He has reconciled us, brothers and sisters, to not make us, divided churches or black churches or white churches or Asian churches, whatever. He's made us one church, one kingdom, and let's pursue Jesus together." Thank you for this episode. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of Rechurch Podcast. Tune in next week.